caps on. Yes, so we have here the amazing Amelia Uzategui Bonilla.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please maybe correct my pronunciation?
No, your pronunciation is like shockingly good.
I practiced a bit, but I think I still butchered it. Let's be honest.
No. Just like my first name, I like to use the Spanish accent of Amelia. Just like that, those really like open vowels. It's also like there's a journey with my name because it was growing up in the United States. It was quite difficult for many people because I was not in a Spanish-speaking community when I was working or dancing or going to school. But so I was Amelia actually for up until I was 24. And then I reclaimed Amelia, which is what my family calls me, which is my name.
Beautiful. It's a great way to, I guess, to hold on to this identity from your past.
Yeah.
Okay, and so your background, you grew up in America, and so your family's origin or your history is connected to Peru, am I right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I was born in Peru, and my family immigrated when I was a baby, when I was about 18 months, and I grew up in California.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
How would one describe your work and your roles? I was going to begin an attempt at that, but as we were saying, every time I encounter you or your work, it's always vastly different, which is amazing. If I could think, I came across a talk you were doing at the Congress on navigating power structures in dance, and to creating your own work, to teaching profi training, to running the Edith Tanzhaus in Frankfurt, to being, I guess, a political activist for the situation in Peru and other such topics. So perhaps you could carry this forward and continue.
Yeah, thank you. It's something that I'm also like, I'm in a moment right now where I'm taking some time to reflect. I think maybe many of us have been working in the field of dance can identify with this period of time during the pandemic brought a lot of opportunities and a lot of kind of loosely structured fundings, which just meant that they were more open to be able to try things out. And now that period is closing and it's a bit tighter and it's like this kind of moment of reckoning, or also like for me, it's like touching the bottom again of like, who am I? What am I about? What do I want to be doing? And also I think there's a struggle that I find within like living in Germany where there's like this idea of like the Schublade or where you're supposed to fit yourself in. And I think I do a very poor job of doing this.
Which is a good thing, I think.
Thank you. I hope so. I mean, I think it's difficult because then folks don't know how to situate you. And I think that's like, I'm a bit slippery in this way. And I think I have been since since I was a young dancer. I was always interested in multiple aspects of the field. And I do think that it is a strength for sure, but I do think that there comes a time when, I don't know if there ever comes a time where you should like profile yourself, but I want to also figure out like, what are the things that I do to make a living? What are the things that I do that are passion projects? What are the things that I keep for myself? And also like how to talk about my work in a way that is not putting myself in danger. And I think that's like a very real thing at the moment with the current political situation.
Absolutely.
I've been thinking a lot about that, maybe too much. Like it gets into like a little bit of despair, I would even say. But I'm trying to focus on how to use like artistic language is also abstract and also open to interpretation, and dance is very open interpretation, and to like leave that openness and to find other things maybe to focus on while this like kind of swing is happening towards like a more conservative. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think you did a great job of covering that, because I think, I'm also not one to try to label someone or to make bullet points, but for the sake of maybe a summary into a direct entry point to a podcast, I was like even struggling. How do I introduce you? How do I sort of, from my perspective alone, try to summarize one person's life, work, interests, passion, how they spend their time? So
No.
Thank you for giving that nice broad description of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I think there's also something I've been noticing that wherever, because I've moved around a lot, I think as many dance artists do, and each time I move to a new community, I look for like what are the structures that bring people together, and if those are missing, then like what can I also bring to that, or what can I what can I contribute to building communities, and that's for sure in Frankfurt has been like the structure of ID Frankfurt as a Verein. I think that there's a need for more associations with different, maybe like bringing different kinds of identities together because of how broad Frankfurt is and how much like I think that there really is a need for more migrant voices to make themselves very present and loud, but also not to be siloed or isolated. And I think that's been also like some of my recent experience working in institutions and how dangerous that can be when you're alone, because then it makes it just really difficult to be able to protect yourself.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only about having the opportunity, but having the support behind and surrounding it as well.
Exactly.
Okay, maybe we could talk a bit more about ID Frankfurt, because I see you're doing great work, and your accessibility and your approaches to connect to a large audience is really fantastic. And yeah, I think more people should be sort of joining this and participating in all the resources you have. You have some, for example, some open calls, and you have these weekly summaries of different projects and auditions going on, which is a way to sort of share resources, if you will. And what also I love about your work is you just create a space for people to connect and gather with these meetups and coffee hangouts. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, you know, this project came about like with Mareike Uhl. I can't take all the credit for it in any way, shape, or form. And it was very exciting to join Mareike in this endeavor, also coming from like Mareike's own experience of working with inside of Musanturm as part of like what's now the Tanzplattform Rhein-Main, and also like lifting up what is happening there, I think is also really important. So it's like the intention was never to create anything that would be in competition, but rather something different that kind of meets the gaps. So like filling in those gaps around like questions like consultations, like sometimes like giving that time. So also in the last 2.5 years, there's been many artists that I've met with and really gone deep into what they're about, what they want, and just giving them as many opportunities as possible to be able to link up for help. And I think also like I like why I also felt really motivated to do that is because I had people like this when I was first coming onto the scene, which wasn't too long ago, like in Frankfurt in 2020, of people that really encouraged me to apply for funding, and then also to get into the funding structure is sometimes more difficult for different people, depending on if you went to school in the region or maybe what kind of topics you're working on, etc. Sometimes it feels like a confusing or scary, even intimidating, like when I talk to different artists. So I think we're trying to close the gap in terms of making also like encouraging artists to stay within the field, to make room for themselves, or to also like go for those funding structures that exist. And then on the other side, like as part of ID Frankfurt, there's the political advocacy. So also like meeting with the Kulturdezernentin and letting her know about what kind of activities are happening, what kind of projects are taking place, what are the initiatives, and what kind of vision we have for also this project to grow, but also for the funding to grow. And there we talk, and you know, she also tells us about the political situation that's inside of Frankfurt or that's in Hessen, and we have a conversation. And I think that's just the beginning of more conversations.
Fantastic. It sounds fascinating. It's very important as well to be this almost like a bridge of sorts between various institutions, and which can also be like islands sometimes. It's very hard to navigate. And So great work with also trying to help people find their way through this very confusing bureaucratic process of applying for funds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a lot in Germany as well. There's great support, but it's also very difficult to sometimes understand it all, especially with the language. We talked about this already before.
Absolutely.
So tell me some of the other things that ID Tanzhaus is working on, or some of the core goals involved.
Well, the main goal in the beginning was about visibility. So also this like real push in public relations. And that I think like a great example is our website. We also published a brochure, and that gives an overview also of all the residency projects, which have been there are a lot. Like there's 6 the first year and maybe 7 the second, and then 3 the last year. So it's something like 16 projects are featured in the brochure, and they're all very different. And that was something also like another point of like this expanded definition of contemporary dance, which is something that I also bring into like my own work and my teaching, because the way that I observe the field, or the way that I've also like lived out like my career as a dancer and performer, is that it's just so broad and so wide reaching, that there is no like I don't know, like when I was a young dancer, I would have teachers that maybe like danced well, I mean, this is like in the New York context, but they danced with the Paul Taylor Dance Company for like their whole life,
Right.
you know, and then they go on to do that repertoire or teach that repertoire or teach that technique, and that's their life, and that's how they define themselves. And I think that this
It filters down.
Exactly.
It's passed on. Okay.
Exactly, and this is not really how the field works so much anymore, where there's like more of a change or quicker changes of who are the next choreographers, of like what are the trends, what also other spaces are being opened up for dance to exist, whether it's more along the lines of theater or experimental theater or performance, visual arts, like in museum contexts.
Yeah, it's a greater demand to be a lot more versatile in terms of not only the style, but also the performance method and context.
There's all of this like funding for digital projects, which have just continued to expand. And then I mean, those kinds of projects really excite me because it also like decenters the body somehow. Like this body that became so important and was so loaded with so much like political baggage as well. It's like, well, what does it mean if you're working with mocap and with animation, and then actually your body is, you know, like it's
also a vessel or another stage, not the final product.
The traces of your body are then in the product, or it's not so much about like your physical, and this is something where I can see how some people are like, oh no, we want to hold on to something else, but I think that we can do both. Like you don't have to let go of something in order to explore another terrain.
Absolutely, it's expanding it.
Exactly. And then of course there's also like all of the discourse around sorry, how do you say this word? Decoloniality. Yeah, so like, I mean, in some academic terms, it's known as like post-colonialism, but then really practically, like with like outside of the academia, it's like Migrantenkinder, like children of diaspora communities who live in Europe and are making work in dance or want to also enter the field. And this is also an area like there's a few examples in Frankfurt that I've gotten to know like their projects and follow them, and also provide spaces for performing to take place. Sometimes it goes more along like urban dance as well, but those are spaces that don't really fit into the structures that are currently offered by the academic institutions. And then also like how I think that there are various projects that are also finding their way into the funding structures for sure, but it almost feels like it's a little like we're behind because you know, like hip hop and b-boying has been around for a while. And suddenly it's like kind of being discovered, but there's so many fusions and so many things that are taking place. And I mean, I think that's what I love about being in Frankfurt, is that there's so much of dance actually, and so many different kinds of communities that are dancing. I don't think they all need to be all together because they are different.
Yeah.
But in terms of just being able to engage with one another, or like something like it's had different names. Like it was Frankfurt Tanzt in 2022, and then the Frankfurt Tanzsommer. But this is also like through funding from the city to be able to create like programming that brings together various groups through workshops and performances for different age groups as well. And we found that this was also very successful in terms of bringing people together and being able to see and experience each other's work, but also for audiences to like spend a whole day experiencing different kinds of dance that take place in Frankfurt, like Rhein-Main.
Amazing work. Yeah, the field is definitely diversifying, and also with the forms of dance that are around, and yeah, this should only be encouraged. I think it's going back to what you said about the Paul Taylor and having one sort of style or method. And there's nothing wrong with, of course, following this, but yeah, the field is different now. It's just like exploding with possibilities, and yeah, it feels like you're really at the forefront of this and trying to connect different sectors. So yeah, well done.
And there's like also like I don't want to forget. There's also other lines of thinking around, like for example, like things around access or care, and that has been it's also been interesting because I think it's been very much a part of how like Marijke and I wanted to work together. Like from the beginning of the project, we started working also with a moderator, like with a coach, to help us improve our communication with one another, but also with the people that we work with. And that kind of care then also translates into being very conscious about like barrierefreiheit, or like the barriers that exist within many of the dance studios.
Yep.
So if we wanted to invite an artist that dances with a wheelchair, how do they get into the space? How do they get out of the space if in case there's an emergency? Those kinds of things we've been thinking about. So there was also like a mobile sprung dance floor that we bought that also has a ramp. So it can be accessible for a performer that dances with a wheelchair. And then also just thinking about because like that kind of information, or making that information available, it just signals that a community is welcome.
Absolutely.
And I think those are things that sometimes are like it might feel like, oh my gosh, it's just like a huge checklist of things to remember and yada yada yada. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, I think that we take very seriously, and I mean, I take very seriously this opportunity in Germany to be able to work with funding that is from taxpayers, from like from the city funding structure. And so then this means that what I do, I want it to be available to as many people as possible, and for them to know that they are welcome to come, that they are welcome to participate in it, that we've thought about them, whether it's like people with young children, offering like Kinderbetreuung, or also like supporting dancers that are young parents and this kind of thing.
It's beautiful, this responsibility. I think we need a little... Yeah, because I think then there's still some almost an ableist quality to the dance field, which we could all address a bit more. And even the fact of access onto a sprung floor, it's such a minor thing, which could be really taken into consideration. There's still these barriers, which really inspires me to hear from you, all the work you're doing, and make us all conscious of all the things we could be doing more.
Yeah, and I think we need each other in order to be able to do them. I think that's the other thing too. I don't think that we have to do them alone. I really reject this idea of the singular kind of genius artist. I think this also comes from my my cultural identity, like growing up within intergenerational family. Like, I mean, yes, like with this migrant story, but very much like working together. And like, for example,
collective approach.
Like if there was a cousin that needed, because, in the United States, we don't have like healthcare. So if someone gets sick, then the whole family is there to support those like hospital bills to get paid. or if someone wants to go to school. I mean, this is also like how I was able to afford to dance and then to go to school, was because I had like, you know, this family really behind me, which I think like they've really, like, when I was a child, I took it for granted, I think, because this is just how it was. Like, oh, yes, I gather, and there are all these adults there to take care
The
of
community
us.
supporting you almost. Okay.
It's just something that's happening. It's normal. And then I moved away and I went to dance school, and I was like, where are all the people?
Where's my family?
Where's my family? And I didn't realize, like, oh, I miss my family.
Right.
But I did. I missed that that feeling of like mutuality or support or love, and I think those are things that I also look for to build, like just like kind of like in my own personal life of making dinner for friends and inviting people over that I know might get along or something like this. Like that feels really important for me, and I have like kind of like made it very conscious. Like I want to do that more. I want to like work less and spend more time doing the things that really fill me.
Yeah, it feels like many sectors of your life are all surrounding this idea of collectivity or togetherness and shared experience, which is really beautiful. Maybe, touching upon your childhood or your upbringing, could you tell us a bit about the role of performing arts or dance in your childhood and how this sort of inspired your journey to here today?
Yeah. Well, my mom is a dancer, and so I grew up watching her dance. And she would, like from Peru, she brought like her skirt, and then whenever we would go to a Peruvian restaurant, there's quite a large like Peruvian diaspora in Los Angeles. I think also I didn't realize how lucky I was to be able to grow up within that. But there would be like like these kind of like DVDs or VHS tapes or whatever they were.
I remember them.
But so my mom and I would watch videos of like dance competitions from Peru of like different traditional dances. So I became like really like skilled at being able to differentiate different kinds of like dresses that were from different regions, and like hairstyles, and like jewelry, and prints and colors, and then movements as well, and different. So this was something that my mom and I did for fun. Like it wasn't I don't know, it was kind of like constant. It just happened like throughout my childhood. I can't really like, it wasn't like every week, or it was just like
a scheduled class to go to. Okay.
Not at all. It just like was like always happening. And sometimes I would walk in on my mother practicing by herself. I mean, she did a dance that's a partner dance, so you're supposed to do it with someone else. I'm remembering that we've done this together.
Yes, we had the chance. Dennis and I have had the chance to dance behind a camera with you for a little video portrait. So,
that was so nice. Yeah. So I would like my mom has this memory, which I like to say because I think it's very telling that even as a very young person, I was probably like 3 or 4. But my mom asked me if I wanted to dance, and I said, no, I want to watch you dance. And I think that's something that I like to watch people dance. Like I think that's why I like to teach so much. It really fills me to see people kind of connecting to their bodies and expressing themselves. And my mother is a really beautiful dancer, I have to say. She's very like spontaneous. She's a great improviser. I mean, it's also an improvisational dance, so I guess you have to be a good improviser to do it. But she has that kind of like like a lot of personality, and my father learned how to dance in order to get closer to her as well. That took a very long time.
She wore him down then.
But you know, like my dad is also a good dancer, and his father, like my grandfather. Like they like to social dance a lot. So like my family, there's a lot of social dance that would take place whenever there was some kind of party, and it was everybody moving themselves however they did it, you know. And that was something that I think it became something where like movement and dance was something that was a bit like easy for me in a way.
A smooth sort of transition to becoming more of a central part of your life, I guess.
Yeah, and my mom did have this idea, which is very much a colonial idea, that like in order to be like a good dancer you have to do ballet,
Mm-hmm.
but that was what my mom believed.
So you went down this path as well through ballet?
I did. I started ballet when I was 7 years old, and that was like a weekly thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Yeah, like weekly classes, then bi-weekly, then like 3 times a week, and then before you knew it, I was almost kind of living there. I had a really great teacher who has since passed away. Her name was Meredith Bayless. She was a dancer with the Ballet Russe,
Mm-hmm.
and then went on to help found the Joffrey School in New York, and was head of the scholarship program. So she was really like a specialist in teaching beginners.
Okay.
And I had her from 7 to 17 as a teacher, as a guide, as like a mentor, I would say as well. She told us a lot of stories as well of what her life was like as a young dancer, what it was like in New York in the 50s when there was a lot of dance work, but not a lot of infrastructures.
Okay.
So like the creation or the propositions for a first union for dancers and this kind of thing. And so like those things definitely influenced me as I chose to enter the professional field looking for. I think it also made it difficult for me to accept poor working conditions.
I see.
Because I knew that there had been so many people that had already fought for
Right.
this.
This always taught you to have a voice and to also to use it.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, you were just telling me about.
Also, Rolling, it's like the Clueless video. What is it?
Oh yes, it's true. Oh my gosh, that was taking you back. I think we're of a similar generation. VHS and Clueless.
Yeah.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
So yes, yeah. I mean, okay. So this question around like decoloniality, like how do you get started? This was also a question that I had to be super honest, because in my career I moved back to Peru. I had like a big like identity crisis at
Okay.
around like 24, 25 when I changed my name back to Amelia. I was also like, who is Amelia? Like who
Okay.
am I as a Peruvian person? Because I received so much I had so many weird experiences in New York as a young dancer, being typecasted, being very clearly chosen or not chosen because of like what I looked like and how I was racialized, or like what people would assume about me. I would be invited to be on a panel of immigrant artists, and I didn't really identify as an immigrant artist because my migration had taken place when I was a baby. Like now I feel like very much an immigrant artist because I'm in the process of migrating.
Yeah. And at this time, if I'm right, you were in New York, so you had moved out of home from LA.
Exactly.
And so you were young and you.
Yes, exactly. So someone asks me where I'm from and I say LA, and they're not satisfied with this answer.
Right.
And it would happen over and over again. Like it was a lot while I was in school, and then like in auditions. I mean, people don't take a chance to really meet you. They just see you, they see you move, and then before you know it, it would be like between me and someone who is racialized as an Asian woman, and we're both just competing against one another for that token role. And
tick the box.
Yes, and this was just so annoying, and I didn't know what to do about it, and I felt like I had to understand what it means to be Peruvian, like for me to be able to define it, and not for it to always be coming from the outside. And so I lived there for 5 years, and I just lived and worked as a Peruvian person. I also have dual citizenship, so that was quite smooth somehow.
You took a break from dancing in this time, or
I didn't. I kept dancing the whole time there, but it was different. Yeah. I took a break from the European and the US American scene for sure. I was really far away from that. But there is contemporary dance in Peru, as there is everywhere. There's also a lot of ballet, modern dance. I did a lot of teaching, but also a lot of performing. I was there in a very rich time. And also, like, that's something that I always am looking for or following, is also, like, where are the opportunities of funding. And when I landed in Peru, it just happened that the mayor was a big fan of dance. Her daughter was a dancer, and all of this funding, like never before, came for contemporary dance. And so I was part of like a residency in the municipal theater that had just been reopened with these really amazing infrastructures and a huge stage. And the International Performing Arts Festival was brought back to Lima.
Oh, so it sounds like actually an exceptionally rich period for you to step away from the scene you're in, to reclaim your identity or discover more about who you are. And then it actually was a very rich process for you.
Yes, absolutely. And I also collaborated with artists from the traditional dance scene in Lima. There's like my mother also studied at a school, like kind of after her other career. It was like, for her, she always says that it was a hobby, but really she did a professional training. Okay. Like she went through a whole training in Peruvian traditional dances, which are many. There's many different dances, and there is a school that gives bachelor degrees, and in like pedagogy and performance, also in music. There's a company that's been around since the 70s, and I was I made I made friends and colleagueships with dancers that were then came to direct that company. And so I was also like an outside eye and kind of like a little bit, I wouldn't really say a rehearsal director. It was more just being an outside eye, an advisor, giving some inputs with body. But I just learned so much about all of these different dances that are in Peru and how they're also then translated to the stage, or what is also maybe sometimes lost in that translation to the stage.
And how did this affect your own identity then in this process?
Well, I think
other than changing maybe the pronunciation of your name and shifting from maybe this past experience and going into more of a decolonial structure pathway.
It didn't happen then. It happened really afterwards. It was like I decided to move back to the States, and I went to San Francisco in 2014, like right at like the very high point of the Black Lives Matter movement, and a lot of discourse around like BIPOC identity. There's also a very strong indigenous movement in Northern California. And I started to reflect back that what I had seen in Peru were indigenous dances, or what I had seen were like Afro-Peruvian expressions, or I was part of those communities, but it wasn't something that needed to be necessarily labeled because it just was. But on the other hand, there is a lot of colonialism, especially in Lima. Like Lima is the colonial city, like the center of the Spanish imperial empire or prior empire.
It sounds a bit like though this national dances and this Peruvian dance a bit more like more of a mainstream part, and less maybe on the sidelines or the margins.
Well, yeah, I mean, I also like visited communities where the dancing takes place like on the plaza, like if you know, like in front of the Hauptbahnhof here, or something like this.
This is the main performing area. Okay.
And it's not even that it's a performance; it's a practice.
Okay.
So also like this idea, like when then I started to learn more like dance theory and this like issue around practice, I was like, oh, I know exactly what that is. Like that's what I've been seeing is practice. People don't necessarily dance to perform. It's about coming together. It's important for other reasons that sometimes
goal oriented,
and sometimes like don't even need to be expressed with words, but it's also this like feeling sensation, this like kind of I've been using this sentence a lot that dances are like recipes that get passed down, that we need them in order to survive. That these dances are being passed down and having survived so much of the colonial violence because they are necessary in order for the community to survive, to be able to like withstand, because it's not over. Like it's still like what I also experienced was a lot of violence, also a lot of like gender violence as well, and that was also very strong to take as a young person, to understand that even though in some ways when I moved back to Peru, I was very privileged because I was coming with like a bachelor degree from the United States and this experience in the US and in Europe. But then on the other hand, I mean, I was like very much defined by my gender and what that role would be, and also by my class, because I don't come from a like a wealthy aristocratic family. There's really like certain last names or certain schools or certain, it's like a whole,
Okay, there's a whole class structure.
it's a whole caste system really. And so where I fit in the caste is somewhere kind of in the middle. And that is very visible to another Peruvian person just by seeing me, just by also hearing how I speak, which is from how I learned to speak with my family. And so I also, the people that I got close to were also people within those structures, like with that, like kind of like we met at the intersections of our identities. And those are things that I didn't really come to terms with until later, being able to have like a bit more language around this, of like what these things are, what does it mean. And when I came to, I had always wanted to do kind of like a master's. I had been looking for it for a while. So I came to Germany because it's affordable to do like to study. I'm like, everybody come to Germany and study while you can.
Gotta give some props. We can't just talk about the horrible bureaucratic paperwork. We have to also acknowledge.
Exactly, yes. And when I auditioned, I went to the Hochschule für Musik und Darstellende Kunst in the Master for Contemporary Dance Education. I brought in some of these questions, or like I think I brought in a score where I was working with different elements of like a particular Peruvian traditional dance as like an improvisation exploration thing, and they were just very welcoming of like, we would like to invite you to come and study in Frankfurt, and please like feel welcome to bring those questions. And so I took that very earnestly. I was like, all right, they've given me the green flag, because I'd also heard that in different I'd heard from colleagues that in different university structures, sometimes this is not welcome.
Right, I can understand.
Because it kind of, it challenges the canon, it challenges, sometimes there aren't professors that are specialists in this area, so they cannot mentor you, or they cannot really grade your assignments.
So they welcome you but with conditions.
Exactly.
Don't rock the boat.
And I didn't feel that so much in Frankfurt, at least not initially, and I don't think now either. But now, like working more within that structure, like last semester I did a Vertretungsprofessorship, and I think there I really, surprise.
No, it's great. I didn't know you were also studying. It's another thing I missed at the beginning, so that's why it's nice to hear you talk and describe the things you're up to.
But it's another surprise thing. It's like, and
no, not because you're doing it, because it's just a great, exciting thing to talk about. I also want to hear about that.
Yeah. But I think there it's I understood where the limits are. That like it's all fine and well and celebrated as long as it fits within certain structures. But then when it kind of bleeds over, it needs to be reined back in. And that's something that it's very disappointing for me somehow, because I thought that like also like with like this global movement for like more racial justice, like after George Floyd and the pandemic, I had hoped that we like as a collective had gone beyond, and like we were all sort of on board that we want like more equity.
There would be no chance to go back to the old ways, that the doors were open and ideas were flowing and dialogue was traveling back and forth.
But I think it's really not the case. I think that there's definite, and I think we're really seeing it now as well with like, so I also want to take it away from only like a personal, it's not like, it's not an individual problem, it's really like on a level of society that we're swinging back towards this more conservatism, which puts a lot of us in danger, with especially and like now that we're so open about our identities and our pronouns and our sexual orientations, et cetera, it's like, oh no,
it's almost, it makes you very vulnerable to the onslaught of criticism and almost blame for the way maybe things are going politically, and then it's very easy to target the marginalized.
Exactly. And so then it's like, I don't think they're ever, it's I mean, like I talked about this with my mom, and I have a coach that I also work with, and it's a reminder that this happens in history.
I've also learned that there's this pendulum type of swing.
So maybe this is what's happening in order for like, we have to keep going somehow as well. But I think that I continually, like what I've been asking these last several months is just like, how can I protect myself? How can I protect the people that I work with? How can we protect each other? And I feel that this is where the collectivity piece comes in, but also it's also like being very specific about who you choose to be part of that like close knit collective, because not everybody's on board, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry. And do you have people around you that you can look to as colleagues, contemporaries, as a support system?
I mean, I think someone like Joy is a great example, like also someone who continually inspires me. Joy organizes, and this was what I wrote my master arbeit on, a retreat that's for BIPOC artists in Ponderosa, which is in Brandenburg.
Great. Okay.
Brandenburg's also like, you know, not necessarily the best reputation, but there is this very rad space, and the retreat is very loosely facilitated. It's like I went back there this summer, and it was just like like this like moment of being able to like let go, to be able to know that the people who are there, you're going to be able to talk about things like in a deep way, and to get resources and support and inspiration and share practices. But it's not about like doing something. Right. So it's a retreat, not a residency necessarily.
Okay. You have to prove why you're there and why you took the space and why you deserved a spot at the table.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm so supportive of what Joy is doing. I think it's really important to have spaces like this and to continue to create room for that, also for rest, this idea as well, because I think that, yeah, I mean, I think too many of us are kind of overdoing it. Why? Yeah, it's a fine balance. It's difficult too, like in terms of the bureaucracies and the deadlines. They come.
And capitalism.
Yeah, it's still happening. So we can't necessarily get away from it. But then, where are those moments of being able to really let go and really feel supported and kind of like fill the vessel, especially like as someone who engages in teaching or in work where you're creating containers or holding space, like the Ida Tansa's project. It really is about this too, of like holding space for other people to fill and to be held. But then it's like, oh, you need to find, that's like what the self-care is. Like self-care isn't necessarily, I also did like a seminar on self-care, but it's not about like a selfish.
No, it's about filling the cup, I guess, as you said.
Yes, and so in order to be able to continue to give. Like if I don't take care of me and my health, then I'm not going to be able to hold space for someone else or for a group of people.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that, because I think you have so much to give, and I would love to sit here and have a lecture from you and learn from you more. But I also want to respect your your resources and what you have to give, and not just mine that. So I'm happy to hear you also looking to others for support and to fill your own cup. Speaking of which, do you have a happy place or somewhere where you can retreat to, whether it's internally or not?
Oof, I mean, I think that for sure, like there's there's many spaces. Like I think for a while, I grew up sort of like, or I felt a little bit displaced. I think it's very common for people of the diaspora to feel that they don't really have a home, because even going back to Peru, it was like, oh, lots of reminders that I'm not from, that I didn't grow up there. So I was socialized differently. So I'm sort of like somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And then the home travels with me. So it's in my body. Like I find those happy spaces when I'm physically active. I find those happy spaces sometimes, like, I don't know, just like, it's very cheesy, but sometimes just like going outside and looking at the moon or something and just being like, whoa, is no one else looking at this? This is incredible.
Go back to the simple things.
Yeah. And then for sure also like cooking and sharing food with others is very much a happy place for me. My home, like where I live now, I feel like I've really invested in that, and that's also why I want to continue making. Well, I now live in Offenbach, but it's still like the Frankfurt Rhein-Main. It's very much like I do feel at home here somehow, and it's not easy for sure. I mean, this is a question too that I think a lot of people that are living in diaspora have, of like how to make Germany my home. But I think that it has to do. I don't have a big answer to that, but I think home is for sure like my happy place.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that, especially at the moment when it's a challenging time and very difficult things going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
To process.
Mm-hmm.
Big time of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And what's something that, what are you reading right now? And what are you listening to? And what are you watching? Where is Amelia right now?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I've been listening to Andre 3000.
The flute? Okay. I didn't listen to it yet, but I put it on the top of the list.
Yeah. I mean, at first I started listening to it this weekend and I was like, what is this? But then I started listening to it more, just kind of like, because I usually have like some kind of like concentration music while I work. It really helps me just to have like some kind of repeated rhythm. And then I was like, oh man, this is incredible. It's perfect for that.
Okay, I might try that one. Dennis, have a new soundtrack to work to.
It's actually really nice. But so there's that. It's what I'm listening to. What have I been reading? I started reading it while I was on holiday. I almost finished it actually, but then I continue to pick it back up because there's like still some chapters that I didn't finish. But it's Sarah. Oh my gosh, hold on, Ahmed.
Mm-hmm.
Ahmed. Sarah.
We can
Ahmed's,
correct it.
Please. It's embarrassing. Complaint with an exclamation point.
Okay.
It's really beautifully written. It's a series of essays that's like Sarah refers to it as like it's another theory that she developed of like a feminist ear. So like this thing of like really listening to people's stories, dealing with complaints through inside of institutions. Okay. So it's a huge institutional critique, but it's derived from many people's experiences. So then there's the patterns, and I think that's something that's really inspires me to think this way, because I feel like it helps me to be able to cope with the individual personal violences that I've experienced or that my friends have experienced, when I think about it on a structural level, that we can identify these things. And
okay, that sounds super interesting. So the commonalities between a vast array of different complaints.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So complaints that have anything to do with like bullying, sexual harassment or sexual assault, racism, discrimination, ableism, all of the things, and how and what happens when you are the speaker of that complaint, that you become the embodiment of the complaint itself, and how heavy that is as well.
Yeah, you have to wear that, I guess, and have it all targeted back at you.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And are you watching something?
Well, I watch like my roommate got a Prime account, so I've been watching really very silly things.
It's necessary, I think, sometimes. It's good.
Yeah, but I did watch. So embarrassing. But this is a dance thing. Like this, there's a series called Flesh and Bones. I think that's what it's called.
I have watched that as well. I have.
Oh my god, it's so ridiculous. It's so over the top. But one of my friends is in it, which is actually really nice.
Right. Yeah, I think I know through a connection or through a friend. One of the people who were in it as well was from Dresden, I think.
Oh wow.
I think one of the main role was from the company in Dresden. So via someone. Yeah. Fun. Yes,
and also like I'm also very curious. Like, is like every kind of fictional ballet film or series like in the like gore horror?
I don't know why these two genres just fit together so well: horror, gore, and ballet, dance. Yeah, institutions. There's something there. Maybe one day we'll get another one. But for now, they're all the same. Yeah. Do you have any questions for us?
Why are you doing this?
Good question. Just to sit with someone like you. Yeah, we're often so busy and running around, but I mean, this is another thing to do, of course, because, but it's also filling our cup, as you said. So it's just a chance. I think Dennis was mentioning the other day that it can also be not a somewhat lonely process. We work a lot with people sort of at the latter end of their process, and we dive in. Yeah. And then we cross over and we part ways, and we're often sort of editing alone, and we looking for feedback, and it's just a really nice chance to us being in charge of our own thing, do something relaxed, and just to, in some ways, broaden some connections and networks between people, give people a little platform to share their own background story, motivations, challenges, and hopefully it's something that can be mutually enjoyable for all of us and the couple of people who might watch it. Would you like to nominate someone or recommend someone that could maybe sit in your chair and sit and talk to us? So someone you would like to hear from?
I was thinking about that on the way here. Here.
Oh yeah, straight in the camera.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that that you should interview Wen Hui.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I saw the show a few weeks ago.
I would watch that.
Fantastic. All right, let's put out a little message. Would you like to ask her to join us?
Yes. Wen, please feel welcome and invited to sit and have a talk with Zach and Dennis.
Yay,
I think
so
that
much.
we would benefit so much from hearing more about your story.
Awesome. And thank you again so much for sharing your time and energy and thoughts and feelings with us. It was an absolute pleasure. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Oh, beautiful. I feel like that was the introduction before we start. Like now I got an idea of all the things you're up to. Like, wow.